If you want to get ahead of 99% of SAT test takers in the world, you are in the right place. You've probably heard this advice 100 times. Just do more practice tests. But the top 1% of SAT scores, they're doing something completely different and way more effective. And if you're still following those generic tips from school or Reddit, you're capping your score before you even sit the test. And this video shows you the actual strategies top scores use to break into that 1500 plus range, even if you're stuck at 1300 right now. So you stop wasting time on low impact prep and finally get a score that you actually deserve. This is the kind of question that trips up even high scorers, not because they don't understand the passage, but because they don't understand what the SAT is really asking. So let's walk it through. So if you're told Amazon opened bookstores in 2015, that's just context. Then we get the real meat. A study looked at 35 period formats, so like Walmart online versus Walmart in-store. And here's the important parts. They found purchases in one channel influenced purchases in another. So that's what the question calls a significant positive relationship. And now the SAT gives a blank and says, okay, finish the thoughts. What most probably explains this relationship. So here's where most students screw up. They start hunting for a sentence that sounds businessy or kind of smart, but this isn't about business, this is a logic puzzle. Here's the core idea. The passage already told you that cross-channel shopping behavior exists. So your job isn't to find a new insight, it's to explain why that makes sense. So let's hit the choices. A says, well, maybe people just shop less in categories with bad access. That's off topic. It's about access, not behavior between channels, so eliminate it. Choice B starts talking about competition decreasing and revenue going up. That's not in the passage, and it's making a macroeconomic claim no one asked for. Choice C says loyal customers don't change, so spending won't go up. Well, this choice sounds very smart, but it contradicts the study. They literally said spending did go up, so let's eliminate it. Choice D says people are more familiar with multi-channel retailers, so they're more likely to discover shopping opportunities they didn't know about. Boom, that matches the logic. If I shop Amazon in-store and see something like I might go buy more online, that's the kind of behavior loop that the study is talking about. Now, I know most people see a question like this and go, oh, here we have historical linguistics. Let's skip it. And honestly, I get it. There is a wall of text. There is theory, there is a study, and all the answer choices sound like they are arguing with each other. But this one is actually one of the easiest questions in the section, if you understand what the test is doing. Because what this question looks like is a content check, but what it actually is a logic trap.
By the way, en route to being able to ace the digital SAT, figuring all this stuff, I highly advise you to check out a really helpful platform called deeptest.ai, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. And it's actually a platform that I've genuinely found really useful. If you're prepping for the digital SAT, this is honestly a game changer. Deep Tests gives you targeted SAT practice tests, and the best part? You get access to 7 full tests completely free. But what makes Deep Tests special is the post-test breakdown. It doesn't just say you got a 1340. It shows your performance by difficulty, by knowledge and skill, and even by question subtype, so you know exactly where you're weak. Most platforms don't even come close to this kind of analysis. So far, over 33,000 tests have been taken by students from 120 plus countries, and many of them have seen measurable score increases. There are also topic-based exercises to improve your weaknesses that you found from practice tests. So if you want to increase your SAT score, just head to deeptest.ai, link is in the description. Start with the free tests, explore your results, and see what you learned.
Let's break it down. Here's what the text says. Some researchers think dialects are 150 plus years old, so that's their theory. But the 2018 study says nope. Their emergence date is just 78 years ago. And not just in Kentucky, across the rural South. So immediately we know the study disproves the original theory. So that's the only thing that really matters. Now look at the question again. As presented in the text, the findings of Mitchell and others best support which statement. So SAT wants you to overthink this. But here's the move. We don't want a restatement of the passage. We want a logical consequence of the study being true. So let's go to the choices. Choice A says the dialects likely originated outside the American South. Did the study say anything about location of origin? Nope. So let's cross it. Choice B says dialects date back 150 years. So that's the exact thing the study disproves. So that's a hard no. Choice D says ancestors of these dialects arrived earlier than their common ancestor. Well, that sounds really fancy. But logically, it's nonsense. You can't have an ancestor show up before the ancestor. So let's eliminate it. So this leaves us with C. They're not part of a speech family that existed before Standard American English. So that's the only choice that logically follows from the study's 78-year finding, and that's your answer.
Studies have repeatedly demonstrated a strong positive correlation between reading comprehension scores and vocabulary size in elementary students across North American schools. So cool, so we are told that in North America there is usually a positive correlation, meaning bigger vocabulary equals better reading comprehension. Got it? But educational researcher Dr. Anna Kowalski and her team discovered no such relationship in the extensive study of primary school children in remote Arctic communities in Canada. Wait, this is the but moment, so it's the twist. She did not find the same positive correlation here, so we are breaking the expected pattern that we have. So, positive correlation equals mainstream North America, but there is no correlation in Arctic Canada. So let's continue reading the passage. However, Dr. Liu via Dr. Illuminate and etc. reported comparable reading vocabulary correlations in the study of students in isolated communities in this place, and similar research from remote regions of Siberia has produced matching results. Now, this is the second twist that we have in this passage. Other remote communities, and it's giving an example of those, Scandinavia, Siberia, and etc. They did show the same positive correlation as it was in mainstream North America. So now we can have this table. So in the first part, we can write region and whether we have correlation or not. So firstly, in mainstream North America, yes, we do have correlation. In Arctic Canada, no, we don't have any correlation. In Scandinavia, yes, we do have correlation. And in Siberia, we do have the correlation. So now, the blank must help us make sense of why Arctic Canada was the outlier, while all the other remote regions have followed the usual pattern. So let's look at the answer choices one by one and think logically. So choice A, isolated student population outside Arctic Canada are more likely to demonstrate a negative relationship. Hold up. So here we have negative relationship. None of the data mentions a negative correlation. Arctic Canada just had no correlation. Also, the other remote places had positive correlation. So this literally contradicts the passage that we have here. So this is a hard no. Now let's move on to choice B. So let's read it. There may be linguistic factors particular to Canadian Arctic communities that disrupted the typical positive correlation. And this one is kind of true because it doesn't really fights our table, and it says There is maybe something unique about the Arctic Canada uh, that is interfered with the typical pattern that we have in this table, and it's softer in tone, and it's using phrases like maybe, disrupted, and etc. This is very SAT friendly language, so we really like this, so keep it. Now let's read answer choice C. Educational approaches specific to Canadian Arctic regions likely result in both reading comprehension and vocabulary development being significantly different there than elsewhere. Well, it kind of sounds possible, but notice what this is saying. It assumes why there is a difference. It says that there's a specific reason, there's a specific difference, which is teaching method, but we were never told about the education system in the passage. So this is kind of inserting some new information that we don't really want. And also it says both skills are significantly different, but the study found no correlation. Not that both skills were just weak or kind of weird. So there's too much assumption here, and we can easily eliminate this choice. Now let's move on to choice D and read it. The Arctic communities examined in Kowalski's study may be more similar to mainstream North American schools than those investigated in those people's research. Wait, so now it's saying that Arctic Canada is similar to North America. But in the passage, we were told that mainstream North America showed a positive correlation and Arctic Canada didn't. So they're not similar in terms of outcome. So this literally contradicts the facts, so we can literally eliminate this. So our final correct answer choice is B, because it explains the one outlier that we have here, which is Arctic Canada, and it doesn't contradict any other information that we have in the passage, and it's more of a speculative, soft answer choice, and it really fits exactly in the gap. Before we get into the next part, let's be real. If what you're doing right now actually worked, you'd already have a 1500. Well, most SAT students aren't lazy. They're just stuck. They don't have a real plan. They had too many books and still making silly mistakes on easy SAT questions. That's exactly why I built the SAT Elite Coaching. SAT Elite Coaching is a coaching program where I train students live twice a week using real SAT patterns that show up on test day over and over again. You're not watching videos, you're solving, strategizing, fixing what actually holds you back. You will get access to 8 live sessions a month, session recordings, priority support, and a full SAT prep community. Now let's move on to the 5 skills that are tested in this specific question. So the first skill that the SAT, that the College Board is testing you on, is logical reasoning. The most important thing is that can you actually use logic to complete an argument based on the patterns and evidence that we have. For example, in this particular question, we kind of created the logic from the passage as a table. So this question gives you data points from those 4 studies. There is a known pattern, which is a positive correlation in North America, and we kind of created a table for that. And there's one outlier, which is no correlation in Arctic Canada. And there are 2 studies that confirm that even other remote regions also have positive correlation. So the SAT is kind of asking you, given this, all this information, what is the most logical explanation for this study? Now let's move on to the second skill that is tested on the SAT, which is understanding relationships. Well, the main thing here is that can you actually keep track of how different ideas are and how each idea relates to each other? And in this question, it is used in a way that it is comparing 4 different regions, and you have to recognize which place shows the usual correlation and identify which one actually did it. So in this case, you had to track which communities were remote versus mainstream, and then Arctic versus not, Canadian versus non-Canadian, and you're kind of mapping all these relationships. Like only Arctic Canada, for example, had an unusual result. So it might be something about Canada or Arctic, or even maybe the language. So this is the types of potential reasons for that. In the SAT's testing, if you can mentally organize these ideas and compare them efficiently. Now let's move on to the third skill that is tested on the SAT, and it is evaluating claims and kind of avoiding unsupported assumptions. And in this specific skill, most important thing is telling when an answer choice is inventing something brand new, or it might be inventing something that is not backed by the passage. For example, look at choice C, like educational approaches specific to Canadian Arctic regions likely result in. So the passage never mentions educational methods or systems. And that is an assumption. That is something new that was created or invented. And the SAT is testing your ability to spot when a choice brings in something new, some brand new information, or whether it goes beyond what is given in the passage. So good SAT answers always stay to the evidence, and if the passage doesn't say it, or it doesn't gives enough to infer it, that's a trap. And the next skill that the SAT loves to test is spotting contradictions. It's almost in every single SAT question that I've ever seen. And the most important thing is eliminating choices that go against what the passage says. Look at choice A. It says more likely to demonstrate a negative relationship. Well, there was nothing about a negative relationship or a correlation. No part of the passage ever mentions a negative relationship. There are only two types of correlations in the passage. First one is positive, and the second one is no correlation. So that's a direct contradiction to what the passage is trying to say, and you're being tested on whether you will catch that wrong direction of the correlation. Now let's move on to the next skill, one of the most important one, which is skill number 5, recognizing the power of weak language. And they usually come in forms of soft conclusions. Main thing is whether you know that the SAT favors humble conclusions. Most of the answer choices that are wrong are bold and risky ones, so make sure to avoid those. So if you can look at the language of the correct answer B, it says there may be linguistic factors that disrupt it. There is a beautiful phrase that is used in the question that I've written here, so maybe. And that's a weak, cautious, SAT-approved language, and it doesn't go too far. It doesn't act like it knows for sure, and it just suggests a possibility. You want to boost your SAT score by over 100+ points, and you need a proven system that actually works, then check out this video where I explain exactly why you're not getting the score that you actually deserve and exactly how to fix it. So check out that video.